we're doing that thing that we don't do very often, where we are recording the intro after we've recorded the episode. And why are we doing that, Stephanie?
You need to throw it to me. Because we talk about some concepts in this episode that potentially could be just not helpful to people in different phases of this journey and thinking about weight loss, especially if you're thinking about weight loss as you're just starting to embrace not thinking about weight loss, that some of these ideas can be just too layered and too triggering and too muddy to be helpful at some stages of the game. And yet for others, obviously, it wouldn't be, which is why we're having this conversation.
One of the reasons why this conversation, I think, is particularly vulnerable. And I also want to say, if you get irritated with me or Steph during this conversation, that's fine. I think that is probably quite likely that we will say things that will irritate. Is also potentially triggering talking about intentional weight loss, because part of the challenge of Steph and I talking about this is Steph and I have recovered from disordered eating. So we can talk about the eating behaviors that are not a part of our lives anymore. We can talk about our experience. But with something like the desire to lose weight, for most people, that's something that doesn't go away. So this is something that Steph and I, we manage, but we're also women who walk around this planet where weight loss is highly revered, and we have our own feelings about our bodies that we manage, but it's not like we are always in a place where we just love our bodies and we would never want our bodies to change. So we talk about some of our feelings about that, which could be difficult to hear, particularly if you're someone who's in a body that's bigger than ours or something like that. So I want to acknowledge that part and to say it's okay if you feel annoyed with us. I don't know. I didn't know how to say this without sounding really patronizing, but almost like validating your emotional response to this. If you think it might be a difficult episode, I appreciate a lot of times trigger warnings don't actually stop people from listening to the episodes, but do think carefully before you listen.
Hope you love it. Bye.
Hello, Stephanie Michelle.
Hi, Sarah Juliet.
Well remembered.
I love that name.
I used to be, was it a thing for you? I just remember growing up, everyone was always embarrassed about their middle names.
I don't remember that.
I feel like everyone was always really coy about their middle names and were really embarrassed about them. That's now I don't know if it was just me.
The only people that I remember being embarrassed about their middle names was when like they had the middle name of their mother's maiden name. I remember I had a few friends whose middle name was like Richardson, you know, and that would be embarrassing for them.
Yeah. I don't think we do that very much over here. I think a little bit more now, with people being more keen to hold on to their names and pass them on. Isn't it quite popular in the US for people to just be called by their middle name?
No, unless it's a junior. So a lot of times, like you'll have Robert and then Robert Jr., but then Robert Jr. will go by their middle name.
Yeah.
Paul. There's not a lot of Robert Pauls, actually. Anyway,
okay,
this is no segue.
There's the chit-chat out the way.
There's no segue to this one.
I don't see how we get there from this. We're just going to have to change lanes. So Stephanie, can I pursue weight loss without dieting?
It's a complicated question, Sarah. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk first about, I think this question's so popular and it's really what everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because why is this question even relevant? It's because when we've rejected dieting or when we've adopted the values of not wanting to self-sacrifice to the degrees that are implied by diet culture and wellness culture that we should be, and or when we simply realize that that's not working for us, it's not actually causing us to lose weight in the long run, we're rebounding, or we're having disordered eating and eating disorders as a result of the effort to diet, and so we simply can't anymore. That's a big loss. That's a big life change. And so I think that takes up a certain amount of brain space, and it takes up a certain amount of our energy to even like wrap our heads around what that means, and to start being more okay with that, and to learn what is it even like to do that. How do you have a life after diets? But the weight loss desire doesn't necessarily go away. And I don't know that, I mean, I would say for most people, it doesn't. So that remains, except we don't have this tool that we would have always used to do it. So then the question becomes, well, can you, and we have a previous episode of like, does weight loss occur without dieting? And if not, because for some people, you know, and I know there's promises of intuitive eating making you lose weight, or after I gain the recovery weight, I'll maybe naturally lose it. This is the hope, I think, for a lot of people. And if that's not happening, then we land here, which is, can I actually pursue it then? Can I be intentional about that weight loss without dieting or without compromising my recovery?
I want to throw a Janine Roth quote at you just to wind you up a little bit, really. And it goes like this. This is Janine Roth's words, not my own. So don't you dare cut this out of context. Losing weight is the easy part. Anytime you eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, you will lose weight.
What episode do we review that quote on? What number?
A conversation about Janine Roth, I'm going to say that was about 32.
For those of you who know who Janine Roth is or who don't and would like to learn more about our thoughts on Janine Roth as an influence on both of us, but also as we see her today, you can refer back to episode. Stop it.
Shut up.
What did you say?
32.
You knew.
I didn't, I swear. I promise I didn't know.
Well, it is episode
No
32.
way.
I believe
That
me.
was a guess, and that has made my day.
Sarah just like has a subconscious list of all our episodes. It's subconscious though. She continues to just spit them out episode after episode. I would listen to that episode if you're interested in that. However, I mean, in that episode, that quote comes up as both of us highlighted it in one of her books, and we're kind of begging to differ.
Mm-hmm.
Weight loss is the easy part. I contend no. I eat to hunger and fullness cues and have been for several years now. I mean, it took me a while to get there after I initially recovered. I was overeating after that. But I eat to hunger and fullness now, and I haven't lost any weight from that. So, you know, according to Janine, I might have, you know, I would have been like, okay, well, once I'm eating to hunger and fullness, I'll end up in this place where my body's just where it should be, quote unquote, or where, you know, that's the other thing is like weight loss to what? Weight loss to where? Weight loss to the weight set point, arguably, but like clearly this is my weight set point. You know what I mean? So this idea of you'll lose weight when you eat to hunger and fullness, that depends where you start.
Yes. Also, there are a lot of people in the anti-diet world who would say no one ever can pursue intentional weight loss without it being disordered or without it causing a rebound. Because the statistic that's often quoted, and I'm guilty right at the beginning, like 4 or 5 years ago, I spouted this statistic out as well because I heard it, that 95% of diets fail. And it's actually been debunked, that statistic, because it's way more complicated than that to try to establish. So the way I see it now is that there are people who can pursue intentional weight loss and it's not disordered and it doesn't have the kind of backlash that you and I have both experienced and other people who struggle or have experienced disordered eating would experience.
Which is covered also in another episode, which I'll refer you back to.
What's the name of it? I need the title if you want the
called Why Can Some People Lose Weight Without Dieting?
Oh, yes. Episode 55. But why can some people control their weight? So it's a similar thing. The fact they could drive their weight down if they wanted to.
Right. So,
and I guess the question becomes then, if you struggled with disordered eating, binging, or anything similar, can you ever become one of those people?
That's the question we're putting out now.
Yes. Well, that's one of the questions, right? Yeah. First of all, how much of it is physiological? Because my theory is that some of us who are more vulnerable to binging, if we try to restrict our food intake, that is a potentially an inherited genetic response, because maybe there was famine in our generational line, that our bodies or our brains, our primal brains, become more reactive, more food seeking in response to deprivation or scarcity. Just a theory. Transgenerational stuff.
I believe it.
And so it could be the case that my brain is wired in a way that any time in my life, if I try to pursue weight loss, that part gets triggered and that part is low down in my brain beyond my conscious control.
Mhm.
Do I think that that is true? I don't know. Probably. There's part of me that thinks, okay, let me put it this way. There's part of me that thinks like if the circumstances in my life shifted, then maybe my weight would come down.
I
So,
think that too.
so if I had a personal chef or if there's whatever it
Yeah,
might be.
right.
So I had a friend come and stay with me for a
Mhm.
couple of months. You'll remember, but end of not last year, the year before. And while she was here, because the meal times became so routine, because there was another person here, my weight went down. After a couple of months, I noticed a reduction in my weight, and I remember thinking, "Oh gosh, this is strange." And there was a little voice in my head that was going, "You should probably be a little bit more structured with your meals, and then you could at least stay there or keep going down." Anyway, she left. I went back to my usual routines, and my weight went back to where it was. And then, of course, I went to India. And when I went to India, that was different, and that was a bit more extreme. And I don't think I would want my lifestyle to look anything like that. But of course, I was physically pushing myself. There was plenty of the food, but it was, there wasn't really any sweet foods, for example. So when I came back from India, my weight had come down a bit and then gradually it went back up again. So there's part of me that thinks, yeah, if my life circumstances changed in a way that my food routines changed, then maybe I would. Could I then decide to change my food routines? It feels like there's a little rational part of me, like the very, I
Yeah.
don't know, this diet culture part, or like the part that goes, you should be able to like make changes in your life and just do them. But there's something there. There's like I end up in a conflict with myself about it.
Yes.
When I get in a conflict with myself about food, I just think my brain been
Yes.
has been changed as a result of having binge eating disorder.
Intentionally changing your lifestyle to match that one, something more structured or something more. Did you say somebody was staying with you?
Yes.
There's also something about the connection of that, right? So intentionally trying to recreate a situation or an environment where that you're trying to repeat, but it's not organic, will impact your psychology. And I'm not saying it's all psychology because some of it could be physiology. And again, I don't know either. I mean, I don't know. At some point, maybe your body would have rebelled, or at some point your body would have been like, this is enough weight loss. I need to go back up. Because we know that that's what happens with dieting in general, that like eventually the body's like, I can't anymore. Like, or I'm not comfortable here, but it does give you some time, that can happen. So who knows if that would have lasted. Maybe there is a physiological barrier, but there's certainly a psychological one if we're trying to make something not organic. And I think when I go away on vacations, or there's certain times where my life situation changes a little bit, my routine changes. And I can tell, like I'm eating less, but I'm not hungry as much. My appetite actually goes down. And that's different. And I want to make that big distinction because I'm not talking about I'm just not eating as much, somehow restricting better. I don't mean that. I mean, actually, my appetite goes down. And it's one of these things that 20 years ago, I would have been like, how do I recreate? How do I make that my day to day? And I would have really believed that I could. But this is not factoring in the fact that like whatever happened in that circumstance was natural. Whereas if I tried to recreate that now when I've got 3 kids and I'm just like, it's not the same. So my psychology would have then gotten involved and my appetite would have gone up and I would have expected it to be down and it wouldn't be anymore. So I think that it is true that probably your weight, probably there's some amount of variability that might exist if your style was different. And that would probably go in both directions, right? Like if you had more stress on your plate, if you had more burnout, if you had more or less privilege in some ways, right? Like your weight might be up and likewise it might be down. I think we have to ask this question from the point of view of what my life is. And like, is the pursuit of weight loss possible in my current life setup? Also to mention, like, it could be like, do I need to, if you're thinking your life needs to change in some way and then that's part of the calling, that's a different thing. But let's talk about it from the point of view of like where we're at.
What was the question?
Can I pursue weight loss without dieting in my current life setup?
It's almost there's the piece here about almost like a moralization of pursuing weight loss, we talk about in diet culture world, pursuit of weight loss is good, right? In diet culture world, everyone should be pursuing weight loss to some degree or another, or watching their weight. And in non-diet world, pursuit of weight loss is kind of can be bad, like depending on how extreme that is. And I wonder if there are people who might even be surprised to hear us even talking about this as a concept of pursuing weight loss. Like, is it even okay? And to that, I just want to take all the moralization out of that. I do believe that for a number of people, and maybe a number of people listening, any attempts to pursue intentional weight loss is going to cause a problem. But I think each person needs to figure that out and decide themselves. I don't think anybody needs to pursue weight loss. And that's another thing that I want to say as well. This isn't about, oh, these people can pursue weight loss and these people can't. There can be this whole, let's take Chris Fairbairn, for example, right? Well, if you're in this size of body, once you've sorted your binge eating out, then you really need to be thinking about your weight. We are not in that camp. What I want is for everyone to just accept their bodies and for this to be a non-issue. I don't even want to, I say have to record episodes about it because I want it to be a non-issue, but I know that it's not.
Yeah.
And I know, like you say, yes, in my head, and those two occasions when I've lost weight through these circumstances, it's brought stuff up for me that I've had to work through and think about. I think not many of us get through the rest of our lives without this theme cropping up. I just wanted to say that piece because it feels important. I almost feel like I want to put a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode that we're talking about pursuit of intentional weight loss because I almost feel
title.
No, but they might be expecting us to say, no, you cannot.
Absolutely.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
We haven't even gotten there yet. It's more the morality of the question. And we may have said this in another place, but is there inherent fat phobia in the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And is it 100% fat phobic to want to pursue weight loss? So I'm going to say this. This is my opinion on it. I don't think it's 100%. It is actually. But let me clarify something. I think when we talk about fat phobia, sometimes that can feel like a superficial vanity thing, like fat phobia in the name of being thinner, like from a vanity perspective. But I come at it from a safety perspective. And I have worked with too many people who are in fat bodies who feel absolutely almost like so unsafe in their skin because of the way the world is. And I'm just acknowledging that. So yes, because the world is fat phobic. So yes, the whole thing is fat phobia, but it comes from a safety reason, not a vanity reason in many cases. I'm not saying that the vanity absent of it, but it's not just that. It's because we have to live. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier about considering the life you have. It's like, this is the world we live in. So this will be a concern. And fat phobic or not, it will be a concern. Now, there are people out there who are just staunchly, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong either, but staunchly and black and whitely, no, talking about this is not okay. Talking about this and considering it is fat phobic and is harmful. It's harmful to you personally, and it's harmful to us socially to even be having these conversations and talking about nuance. There was a recent post by Body Image with Brie that said, these middle ground anti-diet people, no, kind of like you're either fat phobic or you're not.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't see that.
I did. And I understand where she's coming from. I can appreciate that. And I just think there's nuance. And I think about it from a trauma lens very much. And I can't, because I know that my clients and that people are coming from that place, these conversations are what they're seeking. So I think it comes down to like, how does one grow? Do you grow by shutting a door, which can happen, by the way. I'm also not saying that. Yes, I think, again, to my point of recovery, it was like I shut a door on restriction and that was how I had to do it. It was black and white. And that's how I grew. But others don't grow that way. And it's not how their mind conceptualizes things or evolves on things. And the nuances matter, and going through them in those murky waters matters. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way to think about that. I can appreciate the sentiment of that. I'm someone who likes to have discussion about it. And I do. So I will. And that's because I know this is not so black and white for a lot of people. So talking about it can maybe be more clarifying. We haven't gotten to the question, though.
I know. Well, my discomfort with the question, this is the other piece that I want to say,
which we made up.
that there are so many people for whom the world, people in their lives, and even themselves, they have this constant message: you should lose weight, you should change your body is wrong, your body it should be smaller, and you should be able to do it. And the fact that you can't do it, shame on you, kind of thing. That's the message that people have been, I want to say destroyed by. I don't want to be like hyperbolic, but like it is absolutely clouded their whole sense of self and existence. And then they find the non-diet, the anti-diet movement, and they're hearing another message. And they're like, okay, oh gosh, finally, maybe I am okay. Maybe I am okay as I am. Maybe I don't need to pursue this. My fear in this conversation is that there will be people where that is fragile and they hear it and they're like, oh, Sarah and Steph are not saying that trying to pursue weight loss is bad. They're even saying that some people can do it. And then like they're feeling like they should be some people.
Hold on. Did we say that we don't? I don't think we're saying, I don't think it's bad. I don't think that's how that's not how I feel presenting. The way that it feels like it's being presented is some people can and some people can't. And if you are in the camp of someone who can we think about it? And neither of us are saying, well, if you can do it, like, go ahead.
But it's how it's felt when you hear it. So yes. I know we're not saying that.
Yes.
But okay. you know, Steph, how many times it is someone will quote back something you've said and they'll go, oh, you said this, you said that. And I'm like,
sure.
Pretty sure that's not what I meant.
Yes. Okay, fine. I'm absent of misinterpretation, which is going to happen anyway. To clarify, I know what this answer is for me, right? So for me, no. But I respect that some people are navigating this question and want to hear more about it. So I'm still not saying it's a yes or a no, or it's a, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm talking to you as not you, but like the listener as an individual who is navigating your own sense of safety in your body. That's to me why I have conversations like this. That's the point. And that's it. Not because I think it's better or worse, or because we should or we shouldn't, or there's health obligations, or not that. It's really and truly because I believe that a sense of safety in the body is so foundational, and that's important. And it's only coming from that value to have this conversation. I want to say that to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Try this on. So someone who is thinking, I think I could lose weight without dieting if I just made these couple of life changes. Okay. Let's say there's somebody who hasn't been very mobile or something like that. They're like, if I just did a bit more movement and if I just cooked a couple more meals from scratch, that's all I'd have to do, behavior-wise, to change. And I think that could influence my weight. Where's your head go with that? That's it.
Well, the behavior is gentle nutrition like. Right? Because if you're saying that the person's saying, if I cook some more home cooked meals because otherwise I'm getting takeout or order, something like that. Oh, but that the impetus is not coming from a nutritional point of view. It's coming from I want to lose weight point of view.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the nutrition's in there a bit, but it's kind of like,
but really it's about that.
For it to be worth it, I would want to see a change.
Okay. Like I again, going back to the gentle nutrition episode, like, okay. I don't know.
But then they're saying, okay, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
No, go on, interrupt you.
Well, to the degree that feels, it's kind of like coming back to how that feels. If that feels like, yeah, all right, I could do that. Like I can make some meals and I hope that has an impact on my weight. Okay, I feel like that could be a very low key thing. But if it's not a very low key thing and it feels like it's really hard to be doing that, or that's making the psychology upset, that's going to be a factor here. But it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you even said that. Unless, because is that self-sacrifice? Does it feel like self-sacrifice? Does it feel very hard? Does it, you know what I mean? It might not. In which case, it's like, I don't know, let people do what they want to do. But if it feels different than that, or if it's threatening to someone listening, that's our stuff. That's not, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm thinking about somebody maybe listening that feels very threatened by the fact that I didn't say, no, that's not okay. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, I think that's yours. Like, I think that's, I think that's a reaction that somebody's having inside of themselves about their own stuff. Not, you know what I'm saying? I think
Yeah, yeah. I think there's some frustration with some people who I feel they might say, "I'm not really binging anymore." Maybe sometimes I feel like there's some overeating going on, and I know if I made a couple of lifestyle changes, I would feel better, and maybe I would lose weight. And yet, there's a frustration with themselves for not being able to make what seems like a small lifestyle change. Because it's almost like the desire for the weight loss is complicating and getting in the way of even making smaller changes sometimes. I mean, are you seeing this? This is I don't know if I'm articulating it quite how I want to.
The idea of it is like a stigma almost inside, and it's preventing the ease that I'm talking about.
Well, they don't even know what's preventing these. So they don't even know that necessarily like stigma or whatever it is. They're frustrated because they're like, I could just do these couple of things that I think actually would be health supporting for me as well.
Hmm.
But the mind is going, oh, and if you do them, you'll probably lose weight. And if you do them, and
Yeah, yeah.
that part that's
That's not
coming
easy.
in and
Yes.
tying it in with the weight loss,
Oh,
part of what is making it difficult to do things that are gonna that they
yes.
want to do or they part of them wants to do.
Yes, I see that as an issue of attachment. So anytime we're attached to an outcome or an idea, and by attached, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it in words. It's more the felt sense of like attaching to something and in a way that feels like desperate. That I think is what's getting in the way. When I'm talking about easy, I'm talking about not attached. I'm not talking about that you're like, I don't care if it happens or not. I'm just saying there's a difference between it's like in a relationship with someone when you've got somebody who's anxiously attached to someone, to a partner. And there's a difference between like, I love this person so much and I'm glad they're in my life versus I'm attached to this person. If they ever leave, I'm going to die. You know what I mean? And again, it's not like you wouldn't care, but there's a difference in the level of attachment. And that to me is what gets in the way. It almost feels the same as conditional self-acceptance. It's that.
So how do people become less attached to weight loss?
They become Buddhist and learn all about the philosophy of non-attachment. How do they? That's a good question. That's a good place to take this. I think actually it has to do with everything to not do with weight loss. Prior to the age of 40, I was attached to everything, like unhealthily attached, either in an avoidant way or an anxious way or a very disorganized way, which maybe is disorganized or disorganized is both, right? I had a hard time. I would attach to everything. And the places where that's so different is because it didn't come from the focus on that thing. It was focusing away from that thing. It was building a life that was broader. It was having more interests, having more hopes for myself, having more things that I was valuing, having happiness come from other things. It was not the persistent pursuit of the thing. And that helped me not be attached. Even if I still had preferences or hopes about the thing. I think attachment means you are focused solely on something and that is your whole world. And the opposite of that, or moving away from that, is to broaden. So I think by focusing on weight loss all the time, constantly, and having nothing else that feels as compelling to focus on is part of the issue.
So because you mentioned outcomes, weight loss is an outcome. It's not something you do per se. So anytime the way it worked for me anyway, Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now was a hugely influential part of this piece for me, I think, was that realizing it's gonna sound so cliche, and I apologize. Cliches are cliches for a reason, right? But that life is only happening now. And trying
Yeah.
to find a way to be okay enough now. Because if I'm always waiting, if my whole sense of okayness is dependent on a future result, I could see how that was just it was just kind of further away, right? It's just was pushing the rock up the hill, like you never get there. Um, and I think the recognition of that was enormously helpful for me. So there is a little part of me that, the part of us that weight loss, those thoughts are still in there. That's like, oh, I wonder if one day I'm going to be in a smaller body. Like, I wonder. But because it's this future thing, I am accepting of my body and where I am now. So for me, I think where weight loss shows up is because it's never something that's going to happen in a moment now. It's always like a hypothetical future thing. And I can remember meditation was a big part of that for me. It was a huge part. I could have had a terrible day, and then the evening I could make myself okay and feel safe when I
Yeah.
went to sleep, even on
Yeah.
days when I was binging.
Thank you. Because the last thing I just said, there's this voice in the back of my head saying, maybe for some of us, not attaching to weight loss isn't so much of a choice. You know what I mean? Like it feels like my ability to show up in my life and develop these things you're talking about, not focusing on weight loss, focusing on your life is harder for me than for you. And I know that. And what I was thinking was, so that's threat, right? There's something about the threat sense of being in a body that the world doesn't accept. The only thing bigger than that, the only thing stronger than that, it's that relationship with yourself. And I think that to get away from attachment, that is like probably, that's the only thing that can probably come in first. And that relationship to self has everything to do with what you just said. It's about being there for yourself now. It's about showing up for yourself now. It's about the things that make us feel safe in the now. There's something about the now and safety and self that I think that's the inroad. I think those are the things that, absent of a discriminatory world and fat phobia, that's bigger than that, or that is it bigger than? Yes, I think that's bigger than. That's the only thing that I think could cut that attachment, because the attachment is there to be kept safe, and the only thing safer than that is in here.
Well, that's just made me think, because when I went on that retreat the first time and I came back from the retreat, and it was extraordinary how my wants and my cravings had shifted and changed so much. And I came back from that retreat and I spoke to you about it. I completely went off meat. Now I eat some meat, but I eat much less of it than I used to. But for a couple of months, I just didn't want it. And I have no idea where it came from. It was not a decision. It was like it just happened to me. And also my cravings for sweet foods went right down as well. And that was another period of time where my body released some weight. And then after a few months, as the kind of, I don't know, because I felt so connected to myself, even in as much as I just didn't want to distract myself as much anymore. I didn't want to watch television. It was none of these, oh, it's a good idea not to. Oh, I should be more in touch with myself. I wanted to be. And I'm feeling sad even talking about it now, because that feels not where like, it felt like it wore off almost. Oh, well, it did. I was so aware of my body. I could just sit and I could just feel all the energy in my body. And it was such an enjoyable experience to just sit and be. And I've never had that kind of before or since then to that degree as I did for those few months. And it changed the way I eat. I don't think I can become a more spiritual person by changing the way I eat. I don't think that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost felt like when I was more, I say, spiritually in tune with myself, my eating changed. And that is a sticky thought for me.
Yeah.
That's happened. It's really sticky. It's icky to even talk about and say, because that's part of I was just more spiritually awake or something like this, that somehow these natural change, because I know I can't just decide to change my behavior, because whenever
Yeah.
I do, there's a psychological backlash and conflict and there was zero conflict, and I didn't decide to do any of these things.
I respect what you're saying. Like I follow. And it also is like, the whole, if you just release your trauma, you'll lose weight. Or if you just release your whatever, become more spiritually awakened, you'll lose weight, which is extremely harmful and fat phobic to talk. I think what the distinction is that,
I just want to pull you up on the fat phobic thing. This was just a factual experience.
not
When
the
people talk
experience.
about it, if they're talking about like this is what they've seen, that's just a reality of it. Any
Yes.
moralization, that's an extra layer that
I'm not talking about the personal experience. I'm talking about the theory that, because there's a lot of pushback about spiritual posts and things that are saying your weight is your trauma, like that idea, not the experience. Because if it's happened, if it's your experience, it's your experience. And that's why I'm saying I get it. I understand what you're saying. But the theory, the idea that like, that's all you have to do. If you're speaking to somebody who is in a fat body and you're like, you just haven't healed your trauma yet. You just haven't gotten spiritual enough yet. That's damaging because that's not necessarily true. But what I was going to say is, I think it comes down to like your own individual, maybe, I don't even know if this is any different, but like for some people that might not be true, right? Like for some people might be really living an aligned life and very close to themselves and worked through a lot of their stuff and don't lose weight. And I think that like, that's also true. You know what I mean? And that is also going to be somebody's experience. So I'm not trying to invalidate either experience. I think that both can be true, but to run on the idea that it's always true is harmful.
Oh, 100%. Oh, massive. This is kind of the issue. And this is why like, and I tell you, during those months when like how I was eating had just changed, there was a part of me that was aware that I was losing some weight. And I can honestly say, like for the first time in my life, I couldn't care less. I couldn't have cared less. And that was interesting for me. And that's
interesting,
like
then.
such a huge, because it's like the one time in my life where I really, really did not.
You weren't
care.
attached to it.
Yeah. And I was like, do you know what? Even if my weight started going back up now and went back up higher than it was before, I felt like I would not have cared.
But do you think it's that? Like it's the non-attachment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. And that's why I mean it's not a situation I could create again. But now it's interesting because now that I'm out of it, I can look at it and be like, it's more problematic for me on the outside, on the other side, looking back at it and almost going like, oh, that felt really good. But that comes from an attached place.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So it's now like, now I'm screwed because it feels like something to attain as opposed to this was something that happened for a few months.
Yes. There's something about that organic process.
Yeah. And I also think as well, like with the people that I worked with who perhaps their set weight point is lower than where they've been. So they've worked through their food stuff and then their weight has come down, tend to be the people who are the least invested in it coming down.
Yes.
Not that they're not affected by it or like that they don't care to the extent that I felt so detached from the weight loss that was happening to me at that time, because that's what it felt like. Something was happening to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. That's insofar as spirituality / self-connection is related to not attaching. I think that for me, I have a lot of like, I have more clarity now than I had when we started this conversation in that just in the semantics of it, which is that I think weight loss is however that is going to look for someone probably has a lot to do with relationship to self and the subsequent levels of attachment we have to that weight loss. Like reducing attachment via something else, via relationship. And also the organicness of all that.
Yes.
To me, that's kind of where I land with it.
Yeah.
So that inherently disqualifies the word pursuit in this title, right? Like, is the pursuit of it? Maybe my answer is leaning more towards, is it something that could occur as far as non-attachment occurs by itself and organically? That set of circumstances is like, you can't pursue it. That just by definition. I think about a time in my life when I had Lyme disease, which I've talked about here in reference to how that was actually when I developed orthorexia. So of course that will also complicate this conversation a little. But that was the only time in my whole life since the age of 10 that I lost weight naturally. And again, orthorexic was there. But what I mean is I lost weight because my appetite was so low. I'm going to qualify that. I don't think it was I think it was just lower than it is now. And the reason, and this happened to me because I started getting these symptoms of Lyme disease, which scared the Jesus out of me. And I thought I was dying. And my whole focus shifted to my health because I had small children and I was afraid I was going to like die. So again, my attachment to weight loss actually left because I started getting attached to Lyme disease and the management of that and like what was wrong with me. My appetite went way down. And it was the only time that I remember thinking, I can't believe how easy it has been to like, because I know, obviously I noticed I had to like change clothes, get new clothes. And I remember being like, oh, but I didn't care as much. All I cared about was like, how do I get better? How do I get better? How do I get better? And yes, I was pursuing food through that. Like, and there was a morality of that from that lens, but the weight itself, people will say wellness culture is diet culture in disguise. I have had experience where like I was invested and attached to wellness without, it wasn't for the reasons of weight. It really wasn't. And that was honestly this only time in my life where I was like, I don't even care. And I remember thinking, oh, how ironic. Now that I am losing weight, I don't even care. That's not my first concern. But it was another example of where the attachment shifted. My appetite went down, and then my appetite went back up. Now there's other reasons that could have happened, and like the adrenaline of it and so at the end of the day, to me, the pursuit of it, to the degree that that represents a very deep desperation for it, is probably inherently counterproductive to the pursuit of it.
Yes.
So where does that leave some?
More confused than when they
At least it leaves surrender. But then you can't be attached to the idea.
Look at you using the word surrender.
Well, I hear it. I mean, I espouse it. It's there's a letting go. There's a letting go that it gives you, I think. But again, then you can't be like, okay, let go now. You can't pursue non-attachment either.
But that's what I did for the longest time. When I was recovering, I go like, okay, I'll let go. And I did let go. But then the minute I let go and my weight started to come down, then I would
reattach
again, and it'd go back.
Yeah.
And it was that bobbing up and down.
Yeah.
A couple of battles for me it was a sticky part, I think, of recovery, especially for people who struggle with binge eating. I think it is one of the biggest blocks to recovery, that being pulled back into the pursuit of weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we're leaving a big question mark over this for people to find out for themselves, to be mindful, everyone can only test out their own experience, right?
I don't know if it's a question mark anymore. I feel like it just feels like I don't think we have control over these things. I think that's what I'm left with, is like, it's not something we control. Not meaning the weight. I mean, all these factors that we're talking about that have to do with it, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But that there's more about like the evolution of more than just weight that has to do with the evolution of our weight up or down, and that isn't necessarily something we can consciously control.
Yeah. And I want to add on the psychology piece that if your psychology is getting in the way, you feel like it's not your physiology, it's your psychology. I really have to push back against that messaging that you should just be able to change your psychology. Because the thing is, we can influence our psychology to some degree. We can make changes in our psychology. Can we make enough of a change in our psychology? Yeah. That's, for me, there's a big question mark there as well. Because it's going to depend again from person to person and what their experience has been.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. There's a question. Yeah, you're sort of left feeling like, what do I do now? Nothing. It's kind of like, well, nothing. Maybe it's
okay. All right,
everybody.
Yeah, that was very low key.
In my head, I'm hearing the outro music.
You don't know where it's going to start.
I don't. All right. I'll see y'all later.
See you later.